And in production, your nose is to the grindstone. It becomes part of your life. You're on set 18 hours a day.
Yes.
So it's really hard, especially when you're in a creative industry, in an industry that you've given everything for and you sacrificed yourself for, to all of a sudden be denied to be part of that industry.
Right.
And you take it so personally and you look internal.
Yo, welcome to another episode of In a Minute with Evan Lovett, and we are live here in the IM studios in the heart of Los Angeles. And though we cover all of Los Angeles, from Sylmar to San Pedro, Pomona to Palisades, Montebello to Mission Hills, the heartbeat of Los Angeles is Hollywood. And as we discussed a few weeks ago, Hollywood is in the middle of a pretty epic collapse. Some struggles, some problems. Some even say that it is on its deathbed. And that's why I'm here with a cardiologist. He's not a real cardiologist, but I'm calling him that. He is the man who is going to dissect and look at Hollywood, because that's what he does every day. It's Patrick Caligiuri, also known as Producer Patrick. He has some great credits to his name. He has been Big Brother, The Amazing Race, Quest on Disney+. A lot of big shows, but most importantly, his presence on Instagram, on TikTok, on LinkedIn, as the man who really looks at what's going on in the industry, has been invaluable recently, especially as sort of a guidepost to get people through these really major struggles that are happening in one of LA's most important industries. So Patrick, first of all, thank you for being here. I really appreciate you.
Wow, what an introduction. I don't think I've had an introduction like that ever in my life, so I appreciate that so much.
Look, this is the truth. Again, I'm not an industry guy. I like to say, we cover the history and the culture of Los Angeles, not that Hollywood, Beverly Hills, Santa Monica, although that's important too. But the thing is, you have friends, you have people. We all know people in this industry, and the industry is struggling. And you have appeared on my feeds incessantly, and the way you deliver your analysis, your play-by-play, your insight based on experience and based on just extrapolating the news and what's going on is brilliant. It's quick, it makes sense, and there's sort of a feeling when I, watch your feed of everything's going to be okay, even though we don't know what's going to happen. So we're going to dive into all that today. But first, I do want to address this episode is sponsored by Culver City Toyota. Really appreciate those folks. My favorite dealership, my favorite people. Go see George, the general manager. He'll give you $500 in dealer cash off of a new or pre-owned Toyota. We're talking Corolla, RAV4, Prius, you name it. That's Culver City Toyota right there on Washington Boulevard. But Patrick, again, thank you for being here. I feel that this is a very important episode for us, so thank you.
No, I appreciate it. I appreciate you asking me on. I've been a resident of Los Angeles for about 16 years. I recently moved away, but when I come back, it's like coming home. And so, especially here in Studio City, because my first apartment was right over there on Tahunga and Moore Park. Okay. Of course, when I first moved here, I was like, I live on Tajunga, and everybody's like, stupid idiot. But got to know it really quickly.
Yeah, you learn in Los Angeles. There's a lot of those street names, cities, neighborhoods that are either based on indigenous places or, Los Angeles is a Mexican city, first and foremost, El Pueblo. So, you learned that either the hard way or the easy way. So hopefully it was an easy one for you. But, okay, so first and foremost, I want to jump into your bona fides and why and how you became the voice, because I do know this is the truth, is people I talk to in the industry, when they're telling me, I haven't worked in 21 months. The stats you reported, meaning that I reported 36% or 16% are out of work. They're like, no, it's more like 50%, things like that. Everybody's like, do you follow Producer Patrick? Every time I talk about Hollywood and the struggles and the collapse. So first, how did you become that guy? And then I'm going to get into what that guy really is.
It's funny because I didn't go out seeking to be that guy.
Yeah.
I originally had a little bit of a platform on social media because I worked in unscripted.
Right.
And during the pandemic, when everything kind of shut down and all of a sudden I'm stuck at home and I have two kids at home, very young, 3 and 1. And I'm like, trying to figure out what to do, because that's also when our industry shut down for a little bit. And I'm on this app TikTok, and I'm like, you know what? There's all these like Gen Z kids. I'm a professional producer who says I can't create content and like also like put myself in the running, even though I'm middle-aged. But you know what? Whatever. I'm gonna give it a shot.
Right.
So I started doing TikToks, and I didn't know what I was doing, but somehow it let out that I was an unscripted producer. And the one thing about unscripted television or reality TV is there's not many people that talk about it. Or you could go to film school, you could go to screenwriting classes, acting classes, but there's nothing that anybody ever teaches you about how reality TV is made.
Right.
And reality producers have that like stigma of, you know, we're all like, you know, evil people with mustaches and
trying to make things happen.
Right, exactly. Like, oh, they're awful people. And I'm like, and I always read this and I'm like, you know, the stigma is just, we're just normal, regular kind of folks, you know, we're kind of backwards writers. We write with footage instead of actual pen and paper.
Backwards writers. I never heard that phrase. Okay.
So I started talking about online about what I do in unscripted TV. And that was just kind of something I did on the side as a hobby. I'd never really gotten into it. And then when the strikes happened, because I was around for
this was last year, 2020,
summer 2023.
Got it. Okay.
And I was around for the 07-08 strikes, where unscripted had its boom period because all of a sudden the writers struck, and unscripted, which is non-union, we pick up the slack. So a lot of us were kind of greasing our palms, like, okay, we're gonna work. We're back in business this summer. Yeah. And I had just wrapped up a show, and then the strikes happened, and all of a sudden nothing happened, and we were like, this is odd, because you know, traditionally we would be kind of picking up the slack, and nobody ever wants to admit to each other you're out of work. You don't want to say, hey, so I'm not working, because if you do that in our industry, all of a sudden you get the scarlet letter of like,
it somehow is a position of weakness or something.
Yeah,
you're like,
like,
almost toxic, like, I gotta stay away from that.
You're radioactive. Something's wrong with you, right? So we're all, me and my colleagues, even though we all know each other, we're all kind of doing this dance of like, so what are you working on? You know, and we're all kind of bullshitting each other. Like, oh, you know, I got stokes in the fire. And I'm like, and we all know we absolutely have nothing going on.
Right.
But then when I think it started becoming a little bit more, I'll say desperate, because now we're going months. And the longest I ever been between a gig was always like 2-3 months at the most. And now I'm going on 4 months, 5 months, 6 months. And this is just not normal. And, you know, and my agent's not saying anything, and everybody is kind of being optimistic. Oh, you know, it's all going to turn around. And I'm like, the evidence says otherwise. Yeah. And we're in an industry where we all kind of reside on hope and aspirations and dreams, and you know, we're all going to make it one day. So that's Hollywood, baby. That's Hollywood, baby, right? So nobody ever wants to be the guy who's going to like poo-poo on that, but all of us. So I started finally just talking to closer and closer friends, and then they started admitting to me what seemed to be the reality. They're like, actually, you know what, I'm doing DoorDash right now, just trying to make ends meet. And then all of a sudden they start saying like, yeah, I'm actually, my husband's an audio mixer and I'm a line producer, and we're really like gonna have to start digging into our kids' college funds soon, or we're gonna have to like sell off some jewelry, or we may even have to sell our house and move somewhere else.
And I had started hearing a lot about polishing up the resume and even going into different industry. And this is from afar. I mean, again, I'm not even in the industry, but the people I knew that were in were like, yo, I'm thinking about a career change. And I'm like, something's going on this. But yeah.
And you're not hearing anything coming down from the top. Like everybody is now getting suspicious of what's going on, but no one's talking about it again, because there's this like fear, like I don't want to step out of place. I don't want to ruin any opportunity that I might have. And then it kind of came to the head because my wife was just like, you need to go out and, you know, go hiking or find something to release endorphins. Endorphins make you happy. And I was, and we are living up in Northern California now, and I'm going to go on a hike, and I'm about to go on a hike, and it just starts downpouring, and it's just like raining on my parade. It sucks. Yeah. And I whipped out my phone, and I don't know, my eyes went blank, because it just, I just ranted. I was like, this is the situation. I'm not working. I haven't worked in a year. And I just posted it, and it went viral. Yeah. And all of a sudden I'm having friends that are I was a television major in college, but I'm having friends like in Denver being like, why are you on our message board, dude? Like, and there's people in Toronto saying, hey, why are you talking? And then all of a sudden there's this tsunami of support of like, yes, that guy finally said it. Here's somebody who is actually saying what's going on. And, you know, there's part of me that's like, oh my gosh, am I, you know, committing career suicide here?
Right.
But the fact of the matter is it's the truth. And it had to be said. And so I just started keeping up with it. And as I kind of mentioned to you, I started my career in journalism. So I started working at news agencies.
Journalist, let's go. Right. Okay.
And during the downtime, I was also freelancing at a local news station where I didn't realize I was kind of developing these skills of how to turn around short stories, getting the news, getting to the facts, cutting through the minutia and the bullshit, and then finally just being able to tell the story straight. And I've been a storyteller for 20 years.
Yeah, that's what you do.
As a TV producer, but this is a way to like just really get it uniform, succinct, and get it out to the public. And I started doing that more with these reels and TikToks, and they became very informative. And all of a sudden people were starting to pay attention to them because it was helping them make decisions that they needed to know. Like, do I continue with my career? Do I move somewhere else? And I think it really came to a head where the importance was underlined, where I had colleagues commit suicide because they thought that it was something that they were doing. And in production, your nose is to the grindstone. It becomes part of your life. You're on set 18 hours a day. So it's really hard, especially when you're in a creative industry, in an industry that you've given everything for and you sacrificed yourself for, to all of a sudden be denied to be part of that industry. And you take it so personally and you look internal. Is it something I did? Is it someone I pissed off?
And especially because it is so insulated and protected. And like you said, people, at least up to that point, weren't really sharing, hey, I'm going through that too. You know, so everybody's looking at like, oh, maybe they're working. I mean, I haven't heard from Patrick, but maybe he's working or something. Instead of it being like open book, people start to internalize it, and that's when it can get dark.
Exactly. And if you start getting in your own head, it could become a very dangerous place.
Of course.
So again, more emphasis on like, I have to make sure that, you know, the crew, because in my position, I'm always taking care of my crew. I'm always making sure that, you know, people are not being overworked or people are, you know, the catering's there. So it's like, there's almost an importance to my job to say, hey, you know what, the crew needs to know what's going on. And as the crew, as the entire production creative industry that doesn't know what's going on, to get the information they need.
Okay, so backing up, and that's a great foundation. That kind of explains what came after. But before that, give me the brief synopsis, how you got into the industry. You went from journalism and then you got into the industry. Were you like, oh, I want to go make movies, or did I want to make reality shows? Like, how did that progression occur? And then again, you were responsible for some of the biggest shows in unscripted history, you know, or you were affiliated with that, being the producer of some of those big names. How did that progression occur?
All right. Do you want like the full story of like way back when little Patrick was, you know?
Give me the bullet points from little Patrick up until when you started getting in the big dog. Yeah.
So I grew up in a small Florida town called Vero Beach.
Not a small town to us LA natives, because Vero Beach was Dodger Town, man.
Dodger Town. I grew up.
So we know Vero Beach, but yeah, go on.
So I grew up with the Dodgers. Yeah. So I was a Dodger fan. I was blue through and through. Sweet. From when I was a little kid, but I also like saw like Darryl Strawberry, Oral Hershiser, Tommy Lasorda went to my church, so I used to bring baseballs to mass.
That's cool.
And he'd be like, he would sign it and be like, you know, say 3 Hail Marys, kid. And then but I grew up, and it's about 45 minutes to an hour from Orlando. Okay. And when I was like 9, 10 was when Disney, MGM, and Universal Studios moved into Orlando. Wow. And all of a sudden, you know, you're this impressionable age of like, oh my gosh, the movies, holy smokes. Sure. You know, and they do a very cleaned up Disney version of what Hollywood's supposed to be. So, you know, it's like, you just think it's like the talkies and it's Hollywood. And it's like that's the version of Hollywood that you have in your mind.
Right.
You know, you move out here and then you're like, that's not the version that is true. But so I always had this, like, I want to get into storytelling. I want to do movies or production. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I went to college for it. I graduated because I went to school in the Northeast. You know, New York was the big city to move
Where'd
to.
you go? Where'd you go to school?
Syracuse.
Okay.
They just beat Cal.
And that's a huge journalism school.
It's
It's one of the most respected journalism schools. I knew that when I was, again, going on to be a journalist, like everybody talking about Syracuse, maybe the preeminent place to
the
study.
Newhouse School is, I mean, the alumni are like Bob Costas and like Ted Koppel. And so you have this emphasis on integrity, on ethics, on, reporting the story.
Right.
And it just seemed logical that news would be my entry point. So, and with New York right there, I started off at CBS News. I then worked at Court TV. But there was always a part of me that wanted to do entertainment. Okay. And at that point, it was like New York was broadcast and LA was entertainment. Okay. This is the early 2000s.
That's fair.
And of course, my dad was from Brooklyn, and my dad, you don't want to move out to California. Everybody in the East Coast family, they're kooks out there,
Yeah, well, it's LA, baby.
It's
Come
LA,
on,
baby.
let's go.
But the siren call was playing, and I was like, Dad, I'm gonna do it. This is what I want to do. And I packed up the U-Haul. I moved out to LA, lived in Studio City. And the first job I was able to get was at E Entertainment, and which was a full 180 from going from news, because all of a sudden now it's like you're in a place and it's like Brittany and Kevin are breaking up, and you're like,
and that's when E was a huge deal too.
E was on top of its game.
Yep.
And they would have like summer block parties, and Kanye West would give private concerts. It was insane to work at E.
Yeah.
But you didn't get paid anything. It was called, you can't spell cheap without E. But you know what? I was just happy as I was in it. I was in LA. And then just through networking, somebody was like, do you want to try this reality television? Because again, we're talking about early 2000s.
And tell me where reality TV was at this point. The years all kind of blend together. What point of the reality television evolution was this?
Reality TV, I would say, was a toddler at this point. Because Amazing Race started in 2001. Wow. Survivor started in 2000. So right, so and we're talking now, we're like 2004, 2005. Okay.
And do you guys, the reality TV folks, do you guys look at Real World as kind of like the inception of that? MTV's The Real World, or what is considered the genesis of reality TV? Just for my own.
You know what? It's funny. It really depends on what type of reality TV, and reality is very encompassing. So a perfect example that I like to say is so Bertram Van Munster, who's the EP of The Amazing Race, he was also a producer of Cops before that.
Oh my!
So, but if you look at how Amazing Race is filmed and shot, you could beat that running with a camera. That style of shooting really had its genesis from Cops.
Wow.
That run and gun started, instead of like jumping over fences, it's like you're running with
boys.
What you gonna
do? Yeah. Okay.
So, and then you could look at The Real World, and that I think kind of blends itself more into like the Kardashians and that type of space.
Yeah.
And then you have the Survivor, and that really gave that kind of competition reality. That was where that kind of started from.
So you were right there at in
kind of like, and it was sort of
the new model, the unscripted now.
Right. And it was the Wild West, and somehow I was super young. I was 25 and through one producer who recommended me, I'm on The Amazing Race all of a sudden. I'm just a young kid and running around the world, and I just thought this was the coolest job in the world. All of a sudden, it's like, oh, I don't want to write scripts for sound stages. I could I'm in New Delhi, and there's cows and things burning, and this is nuts.
Right.
This is the greatest job in the world. And I realized I was kind of combining passions of like travel, adventure, and also storytelling. And that's when I started doing more with like Discovery and National Geographic. And if it was cool to me as a concept, and it was something that I wanted to learn about, I would go and produce that type of programming.
But you couldn't just go and produce, though. I mean, how does it work? And again, like as an industry outsider, really, I don't even know the machinations of how that industry works. You can't just be like, I'm going to go work for Discovery and National Geographic now. You need to know people. You need to reach out. You need to get the gig, right?
Well, with every show, you're just meeting some new people. And every show that you work on, you meet new people there. And it becomes sort of a network industry. And like I said, in unscripted, it's actually a very incestuous industry. It's not very big.
Yeah.
So you tend to work with the same people over and over again.
Right.
And whether you like them or not, but all of a sudden you kind of build this network, and maybe not everybody knows you exactly, but everybody kind of knows of you.
Yeah,
or
and the
has
names,
heard your name
right?
before. Exactly. And then just been kind of playing that game for 20 years. And then all of a sudden it just stopped.
Okay, what were and I want to get to that stop because that's why we're here today.
Yeah.
But what were some of the biggest gigs that you did? Let me rephrase that. What are you the most proud of that you did in that era, let's say?
Oof. You know, some of the biggest shows that I'm most proud of, I'm actually proud of some pilots that never made air. Some of the best work I think I've ever done has actually never made it to television. But I was very proud of The Amazing Race.
Right.
You know, I did multiple seasons of that show, and that's where I kind of cut my teeth. And because it's such a hard show to produce, it's one of those things where if you produce that, you can produce anything. If you can make it on The Amazing Race, then you can make it on any other show.
My sister-in-law, Gabby, and my closest friend Tim were always, one of their dreams was always to do The Amazing Race. Never did. I don't know what happened, but anyway, just as contestants, but as participants. Okay, Amazing Race. But those pilots, by the way, I got to take a little aside because I sort of feel you on that. Where some of the best episodes of LA in a Minute that I've done are kind of ones that don't get a lot of views, and people you're like, damn it, I was so proud of this one. I did a great job, great script, great research, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, well, I guess that one just didn't hit, right? And move on to the next one, though.
Exactly. I did this one pilot where Sheryl Crow was the host.
Okay,
and she was like the Anthony Bourdain of music. Like, she was going to discover how music affects different aspects of our life. Right? Sounds awesome, right?
Yeah.
And she's calling her friends up to be guests on the show. So we had the Dixie Chicks on the show. We went over to Bruce Springsteen's house and sat down with him.
Okay.
And our first episode was about music and politics, and this was 2015. So Donald Trump is running for the presidency for the first time.
Okay.
We also sit down with like Kid Rock. And all these people had amazing things to say.
Of course. All dynamic folks, yeah.
And all of a sudden they're like, the network, I won't say which one, was like, meh. And I'm like, this is brilliant. This is the Michelangelo of shows.
Yeah.
And pilots, and it was a shame that one didn't make the air.
Are you allowed to say what it was called?
It was called American Anthem.
Damn, the Bourdain of music show.
Oh, I mean, it was so cool. And again, like, it was one of those where I'm like, I'm not worthy to be a producer because we're going backstage, and all of a sudden I'm like bumping into Neil Young, and I'm like, holy shit, okay. Wow. You know, I've never was in the music scene, but it was definitely that Wayne's World, like, we're not worthy. Yeah. A lot of, meeting Alice Cooper and...
How much of that do you think is politics? And I don't mean politics like Trump. Like, I mean the politics of the industry. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, imagine it's a significant amount, but what does it come down to on something like that with the pilot that you think is brilliant? You have these huge names attached. You've done this research, this work. You have the brilliant product. How does it not get me? Where does that?
I mean, that's I think the big issue that so many creatives in the industry struggle with is that it gets to this corporate level and where you are, kind of down in the dungeon making all the sausage and doing all the creative work and being a great storyteller, and you're surrounded by great storytellers, and then you hand this product over to somebody who's not a creative. And they run it through their system, or they'll get a focus group.
Yeah, focus group.
And they'll say, well, and in your gut, you're like, this, just let it ride.
Right.
But then they get, these people on top in the corporate jobs, they get gun shy. And as somebody once explained it to me, you don't get fired for saying no at the corporate level. You get fired for what you say yes to.
That's a good quote. That's a really good quote. Okay, so these are the salad days, though, let's call it, right? From 2000 through the 2010s. industry was thriving.
Yep.
You were getting work.
Oh,
People were getting work. You thought it would never end. I mean, what does it feel like when it's going on? You're succeeding. You got hit after hit and show after show and job after job.
It's like, look, Mom, I'm making it in Hollywood. That was the big thing, because I think my parents were nervous. They're just like, oh God, he's going to Hollywood,
right?
Right. My dad, who worked for the federal government for 30 years, like, just work for the government and get a gold watch and a pension, like explaining freelance to him.
My dad worked for the state of California for about 35 years, so I feel that. But the pension, though, it was all about the pension.
You got a pension, you got social, you make it both work for you. And it's like, it's just like my old man who's like, he was an Italian immigrant too. Right. So, so the idea of like, I don't know when I'm going to get my next job. Yeah. That is like, oh God. But they saw that I was making success, and they saw that I was happy, and I loved living in LA.
Yeah.
But when streaming started and Netflix kind of came on, we're talking about 2008. We were paying attention to it, but not really taking it seriously. But I think around like 2016, 2017, when we really started seeing a switch to streaming, that's when everybody started talking about broadcast and cable, saying there's going to be an expiration date at one point for these.
Right.
But we never knew when it was going to happen, or we never knew how it was going to happen. We knew about
when cord cutting first got into the lexicon, let's say.
Exactly. And the best way I could explain it is it's like the big one. It's like, it's going to happen, but you don't really think about it. But it's going to happen one day. You're probably not prepared for it. You don't go out thinking like, oh, is the big one going to happen today? You never think that, right? So that's how we our mentality was approaching, as streaming was eventually coming in on our business. Then the pandemic happened, which all of a sudden injected the steroid into streaming, because now everybody's copying Netflix. So Disney's getting in the game, NBC's getting in the game, Viacom or Paramount's getting in the game. And all of a sudden, with that injection, we just start seeing like the most work we've ever seen in our lives. And we're just like, this is great.
And this is during pandemic.
This is during a pandemic. Man. Like it slowed down for a few months, and then all of a sudden it just ramped right up.
Content. Everybody needs that content. Right.
Exactly. And we're just like, the golden days are here. Wow. And we were even joking. We're like, wait till Netflix actually finds out how much a show really costs, because they were overpaying for shows on budgets. Wow. And we were just saying that, like, but we didn't realize it was all Wall Street money,
right?
And so about 2 years into this, suddenly spring 2022, I think, is when Netflix made its first report of we're not making any money. Streaming our subscribers flatlined. We plateaued. You can't make, and we blew up this ad revenue advertising model that worked great for 70 years. And oh shit, we're fucked. And then all of a sudden,
the shareholders, right? All comes down to the shareholders.
And of course, like, fuck the people that are making the sausage. Fuck them. But then things just started becoming more and more slow. And I don't think a lot of people realized it, because they were working on their own gigs from what was left over in 2022. Yeah. I started a project in early 2022 that finally ran out in March 2023 that I was showrunner of. And, when I finish, and of course, when you finish a show, you're just like, that's it. I'm done. I don't want to look at like a television set for another like 4 weeks. I just, I'm just going to let my brain go to mush. Decompress. And then I'm going into spring. So this is great, because this is when all the productions start hiring up again. And nothing was hiring up, and it was like, okay, nothing's staffing. That's a little weird.
And
this is spring 2023.
Okay.
But we also saw at this point the strikes were most likely going to happen. We're like, the WGA is going to strike. That's why they're waiting. They're waiting for the strike to happen.
Remember that narrative.
Then we're going to go. Then we're going to get ready, and then we're going to go. Then the strikes happened. Okay, why is not? It's because the actors are going to strike. That's right. They're just waiting for the actors. And then the actors struck, and then it was like, still nothing. And then when the strikes were over, then nothing happened. And that's when I think everybody started kind of, their ears started perking, and everybody started raising eyebrows. But again, this is like I was saying earlier, but we're not saying it directly to each other. And then it was probably about spring of this year, or not even spring, I would say late winter, that's when it all kind of came to a head. And then that's when we finally started saying something's wrong. Something's not right.
So what happened, right? So the writer strikes over, the actor strikes over. You guys are like, here it comes. It didn't come. What happened with the powers that be within the industry where it just did not materialize? What was it? What were the factors that went into that?
Simple. Money. They ran out of money. All of a sudden they're realizing they're not making profits anymore.
Right.
But you can't make profits without making television shows.
Man.
But you don't have the money to make TV shows.
Right.
So you're either going to start trying to take swings for guaranteed hits,
Right.
which you can't do in the entertainment industry. It's a gut process, not a algorithmic process. Like, you can't determine what an audience is going to want just based on data. Sure, that'll get you kind of close, but eventually these algorithms are telling these companies do the same thing over and over again. What worked before.
Yeah.
And these stories are becoming stale and more stale, and the audience is just not into it anymore. And what is the audience doing? Well, they're starting to drift away from the traditional forms of media. They're looking at social media. They're looking at podcasts.
Yes.
And they're saying there's other alternate forms where I could be entertained much better than the job that Hollywood's doing right now, because Hollywood's not being run by the creatives. It's being run by tech companies at this point.
Oh, my.
So, and tech companies, do they take the arts and humanities classes, or do they take just the engineering classes?
Creatives is
right?
certain brain type. Absolutely.
So now we're in this point where you kind of have the creatives who've been sidelined, that there's not enough work for them to go around. 27% of the entire entertainment industry resides in Southern California.
Yeah.
And a lot of...
Is that worldwide? Is that the
that's
worldwide figure?
I believe,
Okay,
yes.
A fantastic figure, yeah.
And many people are asking, well, what do I do next? Do I leave LA? LA is expensive enough to live in. But I can't make ends meet. I can't put food on the table.
Yes.
I can't feed my kids. And so now we're in sort of this crossroads. And I think it's also important to point out that it's not necessarily anybody's fault. We've had these technological shifts in Hollywood over the last 100 years, when silent films went to talkies.
Yes, yes.
When the whole radio...
From the days of the Nickelodeons,
right.
when you'd put in a nickel and have to crank the thing to watch
exactly.
Right.
You had the talkies, and then you had the transatlantic accents, and then all of a sudden, then it went to television, and then television killed radio. And then all of a sudden, then you got cable, and that changed the whole dynamic, but nothing changed since the early 80s. Right. So we've been in this kind of same era for 30 to 40 years, which actually is really rare, that we didn't really have a change. And now we're going from television to internet. Ooh. And the same thing that's happening to the TV and film industry is sort of the same that happened to the music industry about 20 years ago.
Right. Okay. And then, so let me go to some headlines. These are recent headlines about them, just to express how dire it is and has been, okay? Film and TV workers have been left in the dust. Stunning job losses in Hollywood. Hollywood crews are in panic mode. This is an industry in crisis. All right. So this is not overstated. And as you said, 27% of the worldwide film and TV production industry is based in Los Angeles. This is the heartbeat of one of the most important industries in the world. I mean, I know there are things that are more important in the sense of saving lives and that kind of thing, but this is a definite lubricant that keeps the wheels turning, whether it's financially, culturally, socially, and otherwise. It's a very important industry. And the fact is that in the entertainment capital of the world, Los Angeles, it's running into not just headwinds, but like you said, people are moving away. People are changing careers. And it's really sad and it's devastating to not be able to kind of see any glimmers of hope, right? And you name technology as one of the disrupting factors, streaming, but let's talk about different locales, because I know that that's a huge factor, right? Yeah. I have friends that live in Georgia. When they first told me a decade or so ago, they're starting to film all kind of stuff, I was like, all right. No, they're not going to go film a lot of stuff in Georgia. Toronto, New York, New Mexico, Vegas, but internationally now I'm hearing like Istanbul, Toronto, Mexico City. So first, talk about that, where the alternate production is starting to move away, or has been moving away from Los Angeles. How big of a factor is that, and what does that mean kind of for the industry, especially back here in Los Angeles?
I mean, domestically, it's been happening for years. Like I said, I grew up just outside Orlando, and even when I was a kid was when Nickelodeon moved into Orlando, and and I remember when Orlando was going to be the new Hollywood, and they filmed like Parent Trap there or something, and that was all the talk in Florida was like Orlando, and then now is Orlando any type of movie mecca? No, absolutely no. Maybe a couple boy bands came out of there, but that's probably the best that Orlando's ever contributed.
I didn't know all that, but okay, go. But good job, Orlando. And by the way, I got my first fake ID taken away in Orlando, but that's neither here nor there. But anyway, go on.
Really? That's where you would get your fake ID made. I was surprised.
Right.
So we've seen based on state tax incentives, and it's based on those local governments, what they do. Georgia has a great tax incentive. It's much better than California's, and even New York's tax incentive is better than California's, until Governor Newsom recently announced about 10 days before the election that he was raising them. But of course, that still has to pass the state legislature in January.
And that wouldn't even go into effect until July of next year.
Give or take. Yes, it has to. It's part of the 25-26 budget.
And I want to come back to that, but keep going as far as international or away from Los Angeles.
So, again, all these states offer just different tax incentives, but those tax incentives can also go away if those state legislatures decide to roll them back.
Right.
Like Georgia's.
Hold on. And sorry to interrupt, but tell me about the tax. I always hear this, and taxes are one of those things that people's, meaning my eyes glaze over. You do the tax. I know it means you're getting money back for doing production there. You don't need to pay tax. Just tell me what exactly that even means first.
I mean, it could mean a bunch of things, but one is yes, you get an incentive, you get money back from the state,
right?
And that just goes into savings of your production.
Is it for every dollar you spend, you get X amount of dollars back?
It depends on the production, and it depends on the state. But we'll just say that basically, and again, I'm more on the creative side. This is more of a logistical thing. So, I would say. Ask a line producer to tell you through the numbers and figures. But so overall, yes, there are reasons where you get tax breaks for shooting your show on location in these other places. And there are also ways that also the state or the country can also fund your program as well if you meet certain criteria.
An interesting one, right?
So, some countries have a cultural rebate where they'll pay you, if you're doing a movie based on something of significance to that country.
Okay.
So, you're doing Jack the Ripper, the movie in the UK. They're like, oh, well, he's culturally significant. He's or a Charles Dickens story.
But let me ask you this. Yeah. Okay. And again, now these employment bases have been developing because for years production's been moving out of Los Angeles. But as a producer, don't you want your team, your guys, your squad that is going to do a good job, but now you're going away, let's say it's Atlanta, New Mexico, or international, you can't bring anybody, now you're relying on a different talent base there. How does that compare? How does that affect production, or does it? It
depends on the production that you're doing. If I knew that I was going to Atlanta, I know people in Atlanta that I would hire, and then I would base my production off their recommendations. Okay, who are the missing people that I would need?
Yeah.
I know a guy. And that's how we put all production together. That's how I do productions here is, I usually fill in, say I have 10 positions, I can fill 5 of them with people I know, but then I'm going on recommendations of who to fill in the other 5 slots for.
Okay.
But, so even though domestically it's been kind of leaving Los Angeles, it all somehow comes back here as well.
Of course.
But the issue now is going internationally, because now, in much the same way as the auto industry, it's so much cheaper to shoot abroad. It's so much cheaper to get a crew in Eastern Europe versus a crew in Los Angeles in terms of what I need to pay.
But is the talent level there?
There's a significant amount of talent there. Wow. That's the thing. It's I've shot in Hungary, and the musicians there, a lot of times even they've been doing it for years though. Sometimes they've been going to Prague to score movies
Yeah.
because the musicians there are a lot cheaper than filming with professional musicians in LA. But this trend is still happening now. And of course, because these streamers and production companies and studios, they have these shrinking budgets and add inflation to that. They're just saying like, it's just too costly. We have to do it. You know, we'll ship whatever department heads or whatever talent we need to whatever location. But also, you know, this is a union busting tactic because they don't have to pay union rates either.
Okay, explain that. So union versus non-union, huge factor. Unscripted is generally non-union, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so throughout your career, going back to the heyday, you know, of Amazing Race and Big Brother and all this kind of stuff, non-union versus union, is there a stratification? Like, do union look down, or, you know, is there a pejorative viewpoint on non-union productions? Or first of all, how does that relationship work? And then now kind of everybody's in the same boat, right? So
there's always been a kind of mutual respect, I think, between union and non-union. Sure. I don't think there's ever been like any animosity.
Yeah.
You know, especially from non-union, I always look at the WGA and I'm like, man, I would love to have those benefits.
Okay. Right.
You know, and in another lifetime, would I have taken a different route? I don't know. But I think there was a general understanding of when unions strike, we support our brothers and sisters, our colleagues that are trying to get the benefits that they want. Yeah. But we're saying, okay, well, you know, we'll pick up the slack in the meantime. You know, and I know there's some unions that kind of look at unscripted TV when it came on board as a way of, you know, kind of breaking up the union. But that was before my time. Right, so when I was showing, it was, well, this is what television is. And this was where the direction that television was moving at the time. So I just kind of jumped on when I jumped on.
And isn't there an element, and I'm assuming here, I don't know, that a rising tide lifts all boats, whether it's unscripted, scripted, union, non-union? If the industry's healthy, everybody's working and happier. Is that
I think is generally the point, is like, you know, we all are kind of in this survival of trying to make it in our business. And a lot of people ask me, they're like, well, do you like this reality show? And I'm like, if it was a success, absolutely. Because I'm proud of, even, you know, people be like, well, it's a controversial show. I'm like, yeah, but you know what? That was started by a producer and an idea, and they got their idea made and it became a success. Absolutely, they deserve the recognition. It's so hard, I think, to get a program on the air, whether it's unscripted or scripted. And I think a lot in unscripted, sometimes we feel that we get the hose. We feel like we get looked down upon. You know, we are the untouchables of the industry. But you look at our shows, you look at shows like The Voice or The Amazing Race, they're pulling the same ratings as any other scripted show.
Right.
So why, you know, kind of like, why are we still being looked at? We've earned our spot at the table.
Right. Absolutely. Especially after this point. I mean, that's been a dominant force in television and otherwise for a quarter century now.
Exactly.
Okay. I want to get back to the LA focus. When you bring these productions international, and maybe they work, and maybe you get great shows and great films and all this kind of stuff out of it. The way I look at it, and obviously I'm very, you know, LA oriented, is little by little, you're ripping the heart out of the industry, out of Los Angeles, because this is the entertainment capital. It is so important to Los Angeles. Do you foresee a time where, if things aren't changing in Los Angeles, let's say these tax incentives, and I'm going to dive into that, but let's say these tax incentives don't have the seismic shift that maybe we're all hoping. Is there a point that Hollywood could become the new Detroit as far as what happened to the auto industry? And you look back in 50 years and you're saying, wow, Hollywood used to be this, and Hollywood used to be the entertainment capital of the world. And now it's just been decimated to the point where, like, it's almost a novelty if something's filmed and shot in LA and Hollywood. Do you think is that too dire of a way to look at it?
I wouldn't call it too dire. I think you have to look at technology, though. I mean, why was LA chosen to be the movie capital to begin with? It was because it was a perfect setting where you had natural sunny days, 300 days a year.
Yeah.
You had mountains, you had ocean, you could film at any location. But now we have technology where you could film anywhere, and you don't have to have I know, and I'm saying this as an insider too, but you don't need to have the mountains and the ocean there. Right. You know, you can have a green screen, and it doesn't take much. And I kind of joke, but unfortunately, there's a level of truth to this. But you know, a woman making makeup tutorials in Des Moines, Iowa, can pull in the same ratings as some of the biggest shows on television.
Yeah, that's painful.
It's painful.
True. And true. But okay, let me ask this another way. Does the industry need Los Angeles?
Does the industry need Los Angeles? From a truth perspective?
Yes, a truth perspective. Absolutely.
I think a lot of people are saying no. But that's not to say that's not the end.
Right.
You have to make Los Angeles useful, because the thing is, I'm saying no because in the traditional sense of film and television, that era is becoming ancient. So LA needs to adapt to the new era, which is podcasts, which is short form television, which is vertical production. There's a lot that LA can be doing. It just has to be innovative and be ahead of the curve. Because again, you have so much talent that's already here.
Right.
So why would you want to already ruin that creative talent and let them leave? I think what needs to happen is, because we're in this transition period, nobody knows what is really coming next.
Right.
And even though we're saying, okay, streaming is what's popular now, streaming is Netflix and Hulu and all that, but who's to say what the medium is going to be 5 and 10 years from now? Because everything is changing so fast.
Absolutely.
And I think it really is a matter of keeping up with that.
Right.
And if LA can keep up with that technological change and create a desire and need for that talent to remain here, then it can thrive.
That's a good answer. And speaking of technology, I got to talk about AI. Where does this is a big can of worms. How does AI fit in? How does AI change the future? And where does it play in the present right now as far as production?
Right. I think, there's the jury's still out on AI. Is it a helpful tool?
Yeah.
Like when the computer came on, I'm sure everybody was like, remember back in like the early 90s when you got like your first home PC and it had a CD-ROM.
Yeah.
And, like, I'm hooking up to Prodigy on the internet and I could see that it's 78 degrees outside.
Yeah.
You're like, I was like, oh man, everybody's like, this is going to kill jobs. Right? It's the same thing. It is. But in a creative industry, I'm not seeing where AI can take over. Right. And I've used it. I use it as a tool. I use it to help with screenwriting. It's a horrible screenwriter.
Right.
It is just like, man, this can't even do children's programming. This thing sucks. But what it does is it lays everything out for me, and then I can go in and change it. It gives me foundation. And that's where it's helpful. Like if I need to design a budget for a film, I could run it through AI.
Right.
Or if I need to go through legal briefs, I could run it through AI. Can it do the creative for me? No, it can't. Can it create a background for a green screen? Yes, it can. Can it create people? Yes, it can. Does an audience want to watch those AI creations?
Yeah.
No, they don't.
Is there going to be a point where they can't tell the difference though? And that's the worry.
That's a big question. But somebody put it best when they said, if you look at a person who has a real eye and a glass eye, which eye are you looking in?
I'm trying to look in the real eye, right? Yeah, of course.
I think there's something about a real person, because again, films and TV, they're a reflection of our lives. And if robots are trying to do the reflection of our lives, it doesn't work that way, right?
Right.
But, in thinking of it, the other question is, right now anything can generate AI. Am I going to pay money to go see an AI movie? No, I'm not going to open up my wallet at all. No. Never.
Fun little entertaining meme or something maybe.
But or like, oh yeah, like look at this. It's
So would you say, so you're saying that essentially it's a technology to be embraced. Right now, there's questions and people are maybe fearful, but again, it's like we embrace it, we utilize it as another tool, and it's going to actually help creativity and production in the long run once it's sort of harnessed.
So we're always fearful of new technology. That's I just think that's human nature. Remember Y2K?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, remember we were all like ready. We were ready to like go be survivalists
on Y2K for New Year's. I had a group of friends. We used to party, of course.
Yeah,
and they, New Year's is back then when you're young, it's the best party there's gonna be, right? Dude, we ended up. I kind of convinced my friend. I'm like, let's go far away from everything. I don't even want to be around people. We ended up going out to Santa Clarita, like Canyon Country, actually. Just a nice little, like, quaint, not even a rager, just like a house party. Because I wasn't paranoid, fearful, but I guess I was to an extent because I didn't want to be anywhere where shit could go. So, yes, and we all know that when clock struck midnight and everything was perfectly fine. Yeah. And now we're in the 21st century. Yay.
You're like, wow, I didn't really have to worry about that shit. Or remember the Aztec calendar? Like, people were also...
Oh, wow. 2012, right?
2012. Like they made a movie about
December 21st,
like,
2012.
I think there's always people that are worried that the world is going to end, but it keeps on ticking and it doesn't pan out the way that all your manifestations and worst nightmares thought it was going to be.
People persist.
So I think, where AI is a helpful tool, it's a faster version of a computer.
Yeah.
But I don't think it, especially in our industry, it replaces anything. The one thing I think that makes especially human beings so interesting is their uniqueness. Like, you have a uniqueness to you. I have a uniqueness to me. Our interaction is one of a kind.
Right.
And you're not going to replicate that. I don't think you ever can.
That's a good point. The humanity.
It's like people watch you because they enjoy watching you.
Right.
Your mannerisms, and sometimes you'll pull a 180 and you throw something that people weren't expecting.
Right.
And that's what
the day, the mood, the temperature.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's get back to these tax incentives.
Sure.
Because and this is kind of the main reason for having you here, not to get into the tax and the nitty gritty of it, but I saw it and it passed, and there was a little bit of a breath of fresh air or relief. Let's say, okay, it's coming, and California is going to be, at least competing with Georgia and New York and New Mexico and Vegas.
Right.
But to me, somebody off on the sidelines, it didn't seem like enough, right? I believe the number is 700 million, and certain states are uncapped, right? And again,
most states have a cap. I think it was for California it's 750.
Yeah,
and New York it's 700. Georgia is still 1.2.
Okay, billion.
Yeah.
And it's different types of production. Like you said, certain ones don't even fall under the umbrella of the California tax credit.
In California, it's only scripted programming. It's only pilots, scripted television shows, and films. So reality shows, talk shows, animation, any type of programming that is not scripted or alternative game shows does not fall under that.
So
tax
just
incentive.
you coming from unscripted, you saw it and you're like, fucking great. Who cares?
It doesn't matter unless the state legislature actually does something to widen that net.
And again, I saw this. I looked at it and I was like, July of 2025, we got people struggling. I mean, I've told the story, one of our close friends, location manager, 20 years, excellent at his job. And he calls me one day and he's like, bro, I'm a financial advisor now. He's like, I just needed to pay the bills. Like, and he's a great guy. And he was superb at what he did. And then again, my wife's, one of her best friends was a costume designer. And, she's actually lucky because she's employed. She's working on a big project. But her husband, he's like, I haven't worked in 21 months. And I'm like, dude, like that's very significant. So, and there's stories like this about, just go online. There's stories like this everywhere. And I'm like, at best, if the state legislature passes it, we're still talking July, which I think at the time was 10 months ahead of when it was announced, maybe 9 months ahead of when it was announced.
Right.
It couldn't come soon enough, and it's not going to come soon enough. So is this a big eye roll? Is this just something like where it's window dressing? I mean,
it really is going to depend on what the state decides to do. But, a lot of us, it is frustrating because we've been sounding the alarm since, late winter this year.
Yeah.
And 2024, and here we are 11 months later. of maybe 10 months later, and it's finally getting go. But, it's bureaucracy. So everything's going to go at a much slower pace. And
literally, look, I almost thought this was state of emergency caliber.
Yes.
I'm serious
It is.
because, and that sounds crazy because again, it's just Hollywood, it's just the movies. No, this is 10% of the employment roles in Los Angeles are affiliated with the industry. That is a huge number.
It's huge.
That is big. Anything outside of government, that's the biggest employing industry in Los Angeles.
100%.
And again, that is synonymous with Los Angeles, Hollywood. It's a heartbeat of LA. Like I've been saying, I will pound the table on this, that Hollywood needs the help and we need to compete. And to me, I was just like, dude, by July, all these other states are going to be, maybe move more efficiently.
But that's the thing, Evan. It's not even the other states. The other states are hurting too. Georgia is hurting.
Right.
New York is hurting. Everywhere in the United States is hurting because our industry is now leaving. And now, Adam Schiff actually is presenting a bill to get involved federally to keep productions from actually leaving the country, because that's the biggest problem. So that also kind of came online a couple weeks ago. But again, with a new administration and him being a Democrat, and how polarized government is right now, who's to say that that is actually going to pass or make it through? But these are American jobs and these are American workers. So I hope, the government sees that and does try to step in at one point, because otherwise it's just going to be exactly what corporations did, like GM and Ford, when they started building their factories in Mexico and started having cars made down there.
Whew, here come the bailouts, maybe though. No, but,
yeah, I don't know if there's, but if you notice, like, what's so interesting about our industry's collapse compared to the auto industry or even the bank collapse is how remotely silent it's been.
I know.
It's been so quiet, and because the media companies that own the companies that would be distributing the news are the ones that are in financial trouble.
Whew, that's an interesting. I never even considered that element, by the way. I need to ask you on a personal level.
Sure.
This chaos, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot uncomfortably, but it kind of benefits producer Patrick from that persona standpoint, right? Because the more drama, the more struggle there is. And again, I don't want to make you feel uncomfortable. That's not, but because you provide such good information and perspective and have this insight, and again, you have this undertone of positivity, right? Even when you're talking about these negative subjects, I always feel like a little bit warmer and cozier after watching one of your videos, even if it's sort of quote negative content, just based on what you're covering. But it does draw eyeballs to you. Have opportunities arisen because of your coverage, which again is sort of germane to the struggles of the industry? Well,
I don't want to say I get direct opportunities just through social media of like I don't make money being producer Patrick.
Right.
I do this because I'm trying to make sure that there's somebody who's kind of has to do it, right? And it just kind of fell under my lap. But where I guess I could see the benefit of me is that I'm starting to be introduced to other people of the same mindset.
Okay.
Other people who are saying, hey, the industry is not working. And I see the same thing that you see.
Right.
Thank you for saying it. But hi, I'm so-and-so. Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
And I've really started gaining a support system because I'm starting to realize that most creatives are in the same mindset. Correct. We all kind of are on the same wavelength. We all see what's happening. But I think a lot of us are like, okay, well, what's next? Yeah. Because where I see sort of the chaos, there's opportunity.
Right.
And we already got to the point of the doom and gloom. I think we're already at that point where I no longer have to keep beating the drum that the industry's, in a hard place. I've done that. I did that. And I think it's fair to say that everybody has finally caught up to it.
Yeah.
So I don't take any, and I don't want to say that I take any pleasure in that. That's just telling it as it is.
Right.
That was just, again, explaining the situation. And some people chose to believe it and some people chose to keep their heads in the sand. But, eventually the truth caught up with reality, right? So now we're here. So now you know about it, and I no longer have to shout to the winds. But I think the big question is, what do we do next? Yeah. And that's where a lot of people are kind of looking to you,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And then you've created this where you are not just the spokesperson, but you're kind of the leader of this movement where you are informing people. And again, this is so super valuable, what you're doing, because again, the industry is just that important, and you're finding these stories. You have a great way of explaining them, making them easy to understand, and telling us what is next. And what's going to happen. And that's a really important service. So I want to thank you for that. And I do want to ask you about the creative process.
Yeah.
You get a story. What inspires you? How do you put these together? What makes you like, I'm going to cover this today. I'm going to write it out, and then I'm going to produce it and put it up.
I never know what I'm going to get. I fortunately have sort of this network of friends and other producers that, some will send me a text. Hey, have you seen this? This just came out like 15 minutes ago. Yeah. And they'll send me stories, and when you have a lot of time, you have a lot of time to think. So I've fortunately have been immersed in the subject matter for now such a long time that when something new pops up, I kind of try to see where the connections are. Like, oh, well, this can affect this, or I try to think a little bit outside the box. But again, having sort of a journalism background, I'm able to try to dissect the information. What is the most important information that's coming out, and how does this apply to the rest of us? Because I think one of the most important things, Evan, that people need to realize is I'm in it just as much as anybody else is in it. And it's not like I'm a reporter from the outside, who's just like commenting on the war. No,
That's my role. Right now, go on.
I'm in the trenches, and so I want to know what's coming next, because I want to be employed too.
Right.
I've been kind of fielding work all this time myself, and I want to be on the forefront of what's new as much as anybody else wants to be on the forefront of what's new. So if I can pass along any information that I have that could be helpful to anybody else who's in the same situation that I'm in, then I'm all for it.
Okay.
Knowledge is power.
Knowledge is absolute power. That's what I try to tell my son, man. Always be learning. Let's go. Okay. Before we wrap up, no, we're running a little light on time. Give me the crystal ball. I got to know I know putting you on the spot, but give me a crystal ball, man. What are we looking at? Because again, from the sidelines, before July of 2025, at best, I don't expect to see much movement. And that is a long time for somebody who's not working, who's doing the DoorDash, who's polishing the resume.
You're right.
But tell me what's going to happen.
So, fortunately, we can look to the music industry.
Okay.
That leaves a really good blueprint for where we might be going from here. But what we're seeing is, again, we had a gatekeeper system where all of us creatives are hitting the ceiling, where there are non-creatives, people that are coming over from the tech industry, or they're lawyers or business or MBAs, who don't understand creative or don't understand storytelling. So finally, a lot of us are just kind of saying like, well, if it's going to be an independent system, a creator economy, why can't we do this on our own? Why can't we produce our own content? We're all creatives. We all know how to do this. In fact, we're the ones with the talent and the skills, not the people that are above us. They need us. So I think there's a movement now for producers and screenwriters and production people to start producing their own content. We've seen it already starting to happen, where people are getting funding. Where's the money coming from? Well, you go back to where these original advertisers were. They were brands.
Right.
How did soap operas start? By selling soap. So a lot of us are saying, hey, let's go to these brands and start seeing if there's a way where we could do productions with integrations, where we can fund the projects and shows and television series and movies that we've always wanted to create. The ones that are scripts that always got rejected, or our show ideas that never got greenlit, that we know are good. And who's to say we can't put it on YouTube? And YouTube's even created a homepage that mimics Netflix's model, where you can start putting up your own content. And I think really it's just the medium. So a lot of us are saying, if we're the greatest storytellers on the planet.
Yeah.
We all live here. What if we put our best effort forward with no blocks, no one barricading our creativity? We're able to tell the stories that we want to say. And then you have the greatest storytellers on the planet putting their material out there. Isn't that just going to rise to the top? And the idea is that you make stuff so good that Netflix goes, shit, that stuff that they made over there is really good. We kind of want that on our channel because we kind of need their stuff instead of the stuff that we've been greenlighting because we put it through this, ringer system and it only comes up half as good. So I think we're starting to get more people that are proactive and are saying, hey, you know what? I might as well try. I might as well do that dream project that I at least can say that I tried.
Right.
Absolutely. And I'm going to try to put it out there. And I think that we're seeing a lot of success. So the other thing that I'm working on is I've teamed up with a company. They reached out to me over the summer, and it's a platform. And the idea of the platform is you can put your project up there. Okay. And the equity of the project, instead of always going to the executive producers who are either not involved with the project and they're taking a big percentage cut, that equity gets split to the entire crew. So if you're the gaffer, if you're the grip, if you're the camera, if you're the audio, if you're the script note supervisor, everybody gets a piece of the back end.
That's awesome.
Because that puts the power back into the creative's hands, the people that actually made the project, not the people that, hey, I maybe wrote a couple emails, but, I am now the executive producer of this show. And I think that is really how we get the power back and to incentivize our crews to, again, make their own material. I don't know. It's the Wild West right now. Right. So when you say crystal ball, it's still murky, but all of a sudden, I think there's a lot of independent people that are saying, hey, you know what? I am going to attempt to make my passion project. And, you'd rather go out with a bang than a whimper, right?
Absolutely.
So man. I think that's where we're heading right now. And hopefully there's some magic and it's gaining some traction.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. Always optimistic, even in dire circumstances, an industry that's been decimated and devastated in a pretty short time, man. There is a glimmer of hope on the horizon, and it comes from us. It comes from the people. And again, LA is where it's at, and this is the entertainment capital of the world for that reason. Producer Patrick Caligiuri, before I let you go, where can people find you, watch you? And we didn't talk about LinkedIn enough, by the way, but I know that's a big platform.
No worries. It's easy to find me. Producer Patrick on Instagram, Producer Patrick on TikTok, or Patrick Caligiuri on LinkedIn if you're more professional and don't want to do it on the kids apps. But that's where you can find me.
How's LinkedIn as a platform, real quick? For what you do, how is it, honestly?
You know what? It beats Facebook.
Okay.
It's Facebook with suits is really what it is.
Facebook with suits. That's LinkedIn. Well, Producer Patrick, man,
hey, Evan,
thank you for coming in. I appreciate you. You guys know the drill. Like, subscribe, follow, but make sure you follow this guy. Again, I don't consider myself an industry guy, but I love every single one of these posts that come up because they're informative, they're interesting, and with this gorgeous smile and unrelenting optimism, how can you not enjoy it? Producer Patrick, thank you. And everybody for watching and listening, I appreciate you. All right, y'all. It's been a minute.